That's right. In the middle of football season, we're still talking some basketball. Welcome in. It is the Corner 3. I am your host, Austin Oerman. It will be a little bit of a shorter episode here today. Got about 40 minutes or so to chat some SEC hoops, which means I have to be efficient with my words. Not something I am necessarily great at, but you know what? We are going to give it a try. 402-464-5685. If you want to be a part of the show. Talking SEC basketball tonight. Did our Big Ten preview episode last time out. Make sure you check that out wherever it is you get your podcast. Went over everything from the players to the coaches. That's a new section this year that I don't know how I missed adding last year. Then, of course, to some kind of middle-of-the-road projections for the teams. Where do I think it is most likely that they end up? So we're going to do the same thing here in the SEC tonight. We will, of course, make our way through, maybe not quite conference by conference, but hit certainly the Power 6 conferences, some of the interesting mid-majors, probably just an overview episode. So thanks for being along for the ride. We'll be here, if you're listening live on radio, for, again, about 40 minutes. Coming up at 7:25, Nick Sainert will sit down with Lincoln Southeast head coach Ryan Gatula. But until then, I've blabbered enough. It is time to get into what you came here for, and that is some SEC basketball discussion. Because I love you guys, I'm going to show you my notes, give you maybe a little bit of a preview as we go here. But it is very important to me to make sure that you are able to see what it is I am talking about, so you can tell me if you agree, if you disagree, and this keeps changing the formatting on me. All right, so we can officially get into it. Starting with the players in SEC basketball. Player of the Year candidates, always where I'd like to start. If you're going to watch SEC hoops, what are the guys whose names you need to know? First and foremost, I think LeBaron Philon from Alabama is on that list for me. This is a guy that was a really late withdrawal from the NBA draft process last year as a freshman at Alabama. 10 points, 3 boards, over 3.5 assists per game, 6'4", 180-pounder out of Alabama by way of Link Academy in Missouri. Last year, 45% shooter, 32% from three is all, with a 77% mark from the free throw line. He's a better shooter than that in his high school days, but he will be taking over for Mark Sears, right? Mark Sears departed for the NBA after an illustrious couple of years at Alabama. So with the high-powered Nate Oates offense that we've all come to know and love, well, at least some of us, LeBaron Philon with a lot more opportunity and what should be still a successful Alabama team seems like he is a fun candidate to step into that Mark Sears lead guard role. Potential for him to lead the SEC in scoring. We'll see if the outside shot comes along. Maybe the more established option is Josh Hubbard from Mississippi State. Really good the last couple of years for Chris Jans and the Bulldogs. 2-time All-SEC member, SEC All-Freshman team 2 seasons ago. Not the biggest, but he plays for the Bulldogs, and that's how I would describe him. 5'10", 185 pounds, averaged 19 points per game last year, 2 boards, 3 assists, 40% overall shooter, 34.5% from 3, 88% at the free throw line. Has not had much help when it comes to the offensive side of the ball. Get that man some help. But I think that with it being his 3rd year in the league, is there another step up for him to take? Can he get more efficient at getting his own buckets, or will he be able to play alongside someone that can set him up? Kind of, the Batman and Robin setup for him. He's a stud, though. He powered Mississippi State to the NCAA tournament a couple of years ago as a freshman. Kid is a stud. Third guy that I have on my list, I felt like I had to go with a Kentucky guy because I think it's going to be, no doubt about it, Otega Oweh's team. He's able to come back for another year. He'll be a senior this year for Kentucky in 25-26. Spent his first 2 years at Oklahoma. Started every game for Kentucky last year. Shot 49% overall, 35.5% from 3 on relatively low volume, just over 2 attempts per game, but 52% from 2. Another Bulldog, aggressive attacking downhill with enough of a jumper to keep teams honest. Did shoot a career best percentage from the free throw line at about 77.5%. 5 boards per game, assist and a half, and a steal and a half per game as well. Otega Oweh is a two-way player for Kentucky. He will receive a lot of tough defensive assignments. All SEC caliber player last year. I think Kentucky surprised a lot of people who didn't know necessarily what to make of Mark Pope in year 1. I thought the Cats were really good. They were fun to watch. Is there another step forward for him? We'll have to see. Impactful transfers in This guy is at Alabama now. He just transferred in from Florida State after 2 years. Taylor Bull Bowen. I think this is a massive, massive get for Alabama because, as you see, actually, let me scroll up so you can see it a little bit better. Because of the guy they lost, the guy he's next to here on this page, Mohamed Diabate, who left Alabama to go to Kentucky, both in that stretch 4, borderline 5 range, tall, rangy, athletic guys with the potential to shoot it well from 3. And there's not even just potential for Taylor Bull Bowen. In 2 seasons at Florida State, a team that hasn't had the best spacing, whose offense hasn't been perfect by any means over the last couple of years, on still relatively low volume, Taylor Bull Bowen shot 21% from 3 as a freshman in 31 games with no starts, and then 41% on more than double the volume last year. 41% three-point shooter on 2.5 attempts per game. He was shooting threes more frequently than Otega Owe was last year. Think about that. Okay, now fewer games played, lesser role than Owe, I get it. But I think Taylor Bull Bowen is a guy that's on a big list of breakout candidates who can really nicely step into the role vacated by Grant Nelson. I go next to Cannon Catching, who transferred from BYU. He is, of course, now on his way to Georgia. Interesting landing spot for him. I think there's a lot of fun opportunity for Cannon Catchings now in a big year for his head coach, Mike White. And we'll get to that coming up here in a little bit. But Cannon Catchings began his college basketball career, such as it is, committed to Purdue. Decommitted. Matt Painter had some really interesting comments about the former top 40 overall prospect. Goes to BYU. Doesn't put up huge numbers for the Cougs last year. 7 points, 2 boards per game, 41% shooting, and 35% from 3. Good player. Curious to see how his presence impacts the Georgia Bulldogs. And then Jacoby Gillespie, Maryland transfer, headed to Tennessee. Really curious to see how he's able to step into that Zakai Ziegler role for the Volunteers. He was great at Maryland last year. Curious to see how that translates to the SEC. Mentioning the impactful transfers out, Nick Pringle will stay in the conference, as will Mohamed Diabate. Mentioned with Diabate kind of that stretch 4 potential, which plays really well in the Mark Pope system. Maybe the most impactful transfer, though, Silas DeMary Jr. My apologies, Silas. That should be an A. So hopefully my cursor fills it in, makes it look more like an A with my typo. He leaves Georgia to go to UConn. This is a guy that pretty much all the top programs were in on. 6'5" dog. Got the point of attack defensively with a bunch of offensive skill. He can shoot it pretty well. Additionally, Silas DeMary Jr. is absolutely a stud. This is a huge get for UConn as they look to, quote unquote, rebound from getting an 8 seed last year. A huge loss for Georgia in a pivotal year for Mike White. Impactful freshman. Normally I would put together something resembling an all-conference team or an all-freshman team for a conference. I found that a little difficult to do for the SEC. Not that there aren't talented freshmen, but with the role distribution that I foresee for some of these guys, I think it's going to be tough. So I just went with the quote-unquote safe option and the guys that I feel best about having a big role on their teams. Number 1 is Darius Acuff from Arkansas. He is a stud. Probable lottery pick at this point for my money. He's most likely going to be handed the keys at Arkansas, except that he's coming in alongside another point guard, Malik Thomas, who's a little bit bigger than Acuff, at least height-wise at 6'4". Both those guys can handle, can go, can score. Of course, shooting is a question. It wouldn't be a John Calipari freshman guard if there weren't questions about their ability to shoot. But seeing those two guys in the same backcourt at times is going to be fascinating, and we'll jump ahead briefly here to the 3 X factors if you're watching on stream, Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, as well as Allo Channel 961. DJ Wagner's back with Arkansas. That's a guy who didn't shoot it that well last year and is also listed as a point guard. Will all 3 of these guys be great for Arkansas? Probably not. Are all 3 of those guys good enough defensively or offensively to cover for each other and make sure that all 3 of them can play at the same time? No, I don't necessarily think so. Which is why I have DJ Wagner over here for Arkansas as an X factor. If he's able to play off the ball, let Darius Acuff do most of the handling, or vice versa. If DJ Wagner goes full Elliot Cadeau, where he never learns how to shoot, but is just elite at setting other guys up, that can make Acuff's job a lot easier at playing the two, and Malik Thomas would likely be his backup. Back to the impactful freshman here, Nate Ament at Tennessee. Stud, top 5 player in the class, 6'10", fluid wing, some young Kevin Durant comparisons in there. He can stroke it. He can shoot it. He's probably going to step into that Chaz Lanier role, I would guess, in a lot of ways for Tennessee. Maybe that's more Abdul Bashir, who I didn't get to, neglected to mention in the impact guys, but Bashir was a JUCO player. So I'm really curious to see just how early and often Tennessee gives the ball to Nate Ament, especially alongside Jacoby Gillespie. That's one of the better 1-2 offensive punches Rick Barnes has had in a long time, not just at Tennessee, but also dating back to his time at Texas. And then Jasper Johnson, a wing at Kentucky. I think everything is on the table for him. We'll go ahead and take our first break of the show, about 20 minutes or so left. We'll step aside for a few minutes here, be back to go through some key returners, break down the teams. Where do I see the teams in the SEC falling in the pecking order? All that and more ahead when we return on the Corner 3.
I'm Kirk Herbstreit, and today I'm eating Raising Cane's.
Herbstreit's in the drive-thru again. Oh, hey, Kirk. What can I get you today?
I want a solid bench of 4 chicken fingers that are real difference makers. Sprinkle cut fries with dynamic ridge patterns, Texas toast, and cane sauce with an air of smugness that comes from knowing you're the best. Now back to you, Todd.
So the usual.
Make Raising Cane's part of your game day lineup. One love.
This is Lincoln's home for sports talk on the FM dial. Also online at theticketfm.com.
On the internet.
KNTK FM Firth, 93.7 The Ticket.
When you were a kid, clubs were cool. Robotics club and space club and stuff like that. But what do adults get? Book clubs and quilting clubs? Nah, forget that. How about margarita clubs and old-fashioned clubs? Get to Upside Bar and Lounge for the best clubs in town. Try all 10 varieties of Upside margaritas or old fashions and take home a free souvenir glass. Grab the whole crew and pair it with Taco Night on Mondays or Whiskey Wednesdays. Upside Bar and Lounge at 29th and Pine Lake.
Are you looking for an exciting new way to put your skills to work? Explore new career options in the fintech industry at Currency, a Sandhills global company. We offer full-time positions in financial sales, compliance, operations, and other fields. We also offer a 4.5-day work week, an attractive benefits package, and opportunities for advancement. Put your motivation to work and grow with us at Currency. Visit gocurrency.com/careers to learn more.
Select Plumbing and Utility has been serving Lincoln and the surrounding area for 14 years, and they're not slowing down. Select Plumbing and Utility handles all your plumbing needs, from faucets and water heaters to full renovations, and they can even help with your heating and cooling needs. They're also Lincoln's underground experts, repairing and replacing broken underground water and sewer lines since day one. Contact Select Plumbing and Utility today at 402-560-6197, assuring excellence in every situation, opportunity, and challenge. That's 402-560-6197.
93.7 The Ticket. Fox, KFXL weather. Brought to you by Bryant Air Conditioning, Heating, Electrical, and Plumbing.
Your Lincoln forecast for today, a slight chance of showers this morning. Otherwise, we'll see decreasing clouds throughout the day, the light breeze, and a high around 67. Tonight, mainly clear skies and calm winds, the low around 46. And tomorrow, we'll see mainly sunny skies with light winds, and a high near 71. I'm meteorologist Kyle Tucker from 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Hi, this is Tom Osborne. Join me on September 23rd and dine at your favorite local Renza in support of Teammates Mentoring. 10% of Renza sales on September 23rd will benefit your local Teammates Mentoring chapter. Teammates Mentoring helps students reach their full potential by providing a caring adult mentor to meet with them once a week in school. Thank you for your support of Teammates Mentoring. We will see you at Runza on September 23rd.
When it comes to concrete, Stevens & Smith Construction doesn't stall. They go for the takedown. As Nebraska's full-service concrete contractor, they stay in bounds, hold inside position, and never forfeit quality. Whether it's foundations, flatwork, or concrete coatings, they elevate performance and pin down results that win every time. Stevens & Smith Construction is a proud sponsor of Takedown Tuesdays on 93.7 The Ticket. Because when it's time to wrestle with concrete, Stevens & Smith Construction slams expectations.
Back to the Corner 3 on 93.7 The Ticket. Here is your host, Austin Oerman.
That's right. Welcome back inside the 93.7 The Ticket Studios. Austin Oerman with you here for a short but sweet edition of the Corner 3. If you're listening back to it on the podcast version, really appreciate you checking that out wherever it is you get your podcast. We're moving right along from the players into the coaches, and then I'll give my breakdown of the teams where I think they're going to fall. Some of this is going to certainly cross over. But for now, the most intriguing coaches that I have in the SEC, first and foremost, is Bruce Pearl. Historically great Auburn team, not just by Auburn standards, but by college basketball standards in terms of their KenPom rating. Of course, one of the 4 teams with a plus 35 rating over at KenPom by the end of last season. But he loses pretty much all his important pieces. You know, if you look at what Auburn has and what they won't have this year, obviously Janai Broome gone, Chad Baker-Mazara at USC, Miles Kelly gone, Denver Jones gone. Those are your double-digit scores that are gone. Chaney Johnson gone, Dylan Cardwell, role guy, gone, and then some bench pieces from there. Really only get one guy back, and that's Tahad Pettiford, who right now, I know they're not the same size, don't have the exact same role, but I think in a lot of ways is SEC Isaiah Evans. Is there a leap for Tahad Pettiford in more of a starring role? Is he just a bit guy? What does that look like? We'll just have to see. Added a lot of interesting transfers. Keyshawn Hall and Keyshawn Murphy. Hall comes from UCF and Murphy comes from Mississippi State. Kevin Overton from Texas Tech is intriguing. And then Abdul Bashir. For all the Nebraska fans that were listening, there's an Omaha connection there. Husker fans, I think, wanted Abdul Bashir to end up in Lincoln. He does not out of the JUCO ranks. So he's at Auburn. That's a 40+% three-point shooter at the JUCO level. What is he able to add for this Auburn team? And they had 3 guys in the ESPN Top 100 as freshmen, plus an international guy as well. So Auburn's going to be good. Will they be as good? Probably not. Again, historically good Auburn team. Flip side of that is Texas. I have no idea what to make of this team, and I am intrigued by what Sean Miller has put together. Trey Johnson gone, Arthur Kaluma gone, Caden Shedrick gone. You get back Jordan Pope and Tremont Mark, who both averaged over 10 points per game last year. Chendall Weaver back as well. Dalen Swain comes with Sean Miller from Xavier. Modest Vokatitis from Florida Atlantic. Interesting double-digit score, bigger guy there. Simeon Wilcher to run the show, I assume, from St. John's. Lucina Traore from Long Beach State. A couple years ago, he missed last year. But Traore, last we saw him, was averaging a double-double with about 12 and 10. And then Cam Heide. Kind of Mason Gillis 2.0, maybe not quite as impactful. Really fascinating roster that Sean Miller's put together. Doesn't strike me as much more than middle of the road in the SEC, but there are enough interesting pieces back and enough familiarity with Sean Miller that maybe Texas is able to take a step up above and beyond where I think they could be. And then Bucky McMillan at Texas A&M. What a random off-the-wall hire for Trev Alberts, his athletic director down there in College Station. Bucky McMillan, known for his time leading the quote-unquote Buckyball movement at Samford, not Stanford, Samford. Yeah, mid-major hire for Texas A&M on the heels of Buzz Williams leaving. Buzz Williams did a fantastic job building that basketball program back up. And I'm a Bucky McMillan fan. I like the way his teams play, very analytically driven. And the roster we'll get to here, I think, will reflect that. But not the guy I saw Trev Alberts necessarily going after. You would think with what Buzz Williams did to establish and legitimize that program, that Trev Alberts could have gone out and maybe been the guy to get Sean Miller, potentially. Now, I know Texas has more basketball history, tradition, success than A&M, but I was kind of thinking Sean Miller would have benefited at A&M, taking over for Buzz Williams. Not anti-Bucky McMillan. Just not at all where I saw that hire going. And you have to think about that one in conjunction with Trev Alberts' hire of Mike Elko to be the head football coach for the Aggies. And on top of, that's kind of a baseball school behind the scenes too. Baseball hire didn't necessarily work out in year one. So Trev Alberts, I put Bucky McMillan's name down here, but really it could be your name and most intrigued as well. I really only see 2 coaches on the hot seat in the SEC, Mike White and Matt McMahon. Mike White and Georgia have just really been stuck in neutral for the most part. didn't love the hire for Georgia, and I think very, very clearly it's worked out better for Florida, where Mike White was before his time at Georgia. Again, not necessarily bad for Mike White at Georgia, but just relatively uninspiring. You lost your best player in Silas DeMary. You had Asa Newell last year, couldn't necessarily do anything with him. And Matt McMahon at LSU, just blah, not much of anything to write home about in any sense of the imagination. That was an interesting hire for them on the heels of the Will Wade departure, everything that went down there. But Matt McMahon in 3 years at LSU is 45-53, 14-19, 17-16, and 14-18. Yeah, just not a whole lot going on there in an area that has had some basketball success in years past and is certainly in a talent-rich area and is in an ever-improving SEC basketball conference. I don't think LSU can afford to settle with what Matt McMahon is giving them for too much longer. Coach of the Year race, I think, comes down to 4 guys. Todd Golden. I mean, Florida's the defending national champs. What do they look like with another year under Todd Golden? How good do they look in their quest to go back to back? Mark Pope at Kentucky. You always have to have the Kentucky coach up here. And I think that, if not for Todd Golden, Mark Pope will be getting a lot more headlines for the job he did in year 1 at Kentucky. Rick Barnes and Tennessee have really developed into a team that's not to be trifled with at the top of the SEC standings. Always going to have that rock fight defense first mentality. But I do think the additions of Jacoby Gillespie as well as Nate Ament give Tennessee an offensive ceiling that it hasn't necessarily had in years past. And if you add that, let's say 15% better offense to 10% worse defense, I think that goes a long way for Tennessee in having legitimate Final Four hopes. And then Nate Oates at Alabama, interesting roster that he constructed, but never count out the math, right? I think Nate Oates is just kind of already established Bucky McMillan in a lot of ways, right? The mid-major guy hired at an SEC program and shown that there's a path for it to work. Nate Oates, I think, is always going to be in that conversation. So then for the coaches, and we can use this to get into some of the teams. The let's see it coaches. What you got going on? First and foremost for me is Oklahoma. Fascinating roster. Jeremiah Fears gone. Jalen Moore gone. Duke Miles gone. Kobe Elvis gone. Who do they get back? Nobody that averaged more than 4 points per game. Who do they bring in? Xavier Brown, 18-point-a-game scorer at St. Joseph's is interesting. Tay Davis at a lead guard position, 15 points at Notre Dame. They keep Darian Reed in the conference. He averaged 6 points a game at Alabama last year as a bigger guy. And then Nigel Pack. Nigel Pack is still playing college basketball. I don't understand it. I don't get it, but he is at Oklahoma. We'll see where that clicks for him. Again, kind of with Porter Moser, it's not that Oklahoma has been bad, right? They haven't bottomed out. They haven't tanked. They've just kind of been there. Porter Moser's overall record at Oklahoma, 74-59. Winning percentage, not that different than it was at Loyola of Chicago. But think about the first year for Porter at Loyola, 7-23. His worst record at Oklahoma, 15-17 after a 16-19 debut, 20-12 2 seasons ago, and then they earned an NCAA tournament berth for the first time under him last year. Reached as high as number 12 in the country thanks to their rip-roaring start to the year. But kind of like that, Jeremiah Fears, once he got into conference play, wore down a little bit, wasn't quite the same player. And again, a stacked SEC. So Porter Moser, seat's not hot, but I think Oklahoma fans are starting to want to see a little bit more. That brings me then to Lamont Paris, head coach right now at South Carolina. 11-21 debut, 26-8 2 years ago. NCAA tournament appearance, finished the year ranked number 24. They dipped down to 12-20 last year. They get Michi Johnson back, and then that's about all you know about the roster. Miles Stute, Cam Scott, Jordan Butler, raise your hand if you've ever heard of them. I have not. They're down Colin Murray-Boyles, versatile do-it-all forward for them, who was really good. Jamari Thomas averaged 13 a game for them. Nick Pringle's going to Arkansas, a good role guy. Who do they bring in to replace him? Kobe Knox from South Florida, decent player. Mongolian Mike, couple-time Nebraska target. Ended up at, I believe, is Dayton and then San Francisco and then Utah last year, where he averaged 7 points per game. Elijah Strong from Boston College, not a name many people have heard of. Christ Esendoko from Providence, kind of a backup big guy for them. They had Eli Ellis and Ezekias Walker, who were 4-stars in recruiting. But man, right now, it kind of seems like that year 2 buzz for Lamont Paris really just came to a screeching halt last year, where some of it was fit, some of it was lack of shooting, I think, for them. And you never want to criticize a coach for sticking around at a job, right? I will certainly not be doing that for Lamont Paris. He made the choice that was best for him and his family, and more credit to him for that. But there was some real buzz about the types of jobs that Lamont Paris could get after that 26-8 year where they made the NCAA tournament, and he stayed put in Columbia. Thought there was some buzz, thought they'd be better. They weren't. Key bounce back year right now for Lamont Paris. He probably won't ever admit this publicly, at least for a while, but I wonder if there's not some, man, I didn't strike while the iron was hot. Could have found myself, the bigger paycheck and a few more years of job security by taking the leap. That brings me to Mark Byington at Vandy. Took over last year after a good year at James Madison. Really interesting roster for him. Jason Edwards and AJ Hoggard are gone, as is most of the bench. They bring in Frankie Collins from TCU. Interesting smaller guard. Tyler Harris from Washington, I kind of enjoyed. Mike James as a bigger wing. Interesting. Duke Miles from Oklahoma. Good get for them. Jalen Washington never really impressed me at North Carolina, but they needed him, and kind of alongside Mike James. Those two guys are going to be asked to play bigger than they are. Vandy just does not have much height. Tyler Nichols back for them. Devin McLaughlin's back, couple 10 points per game scorers. But there's just not a lot going on in the front court for Vandy. They're going to need their guards to play extremely well and shoot well to keep them in games, or else it's going to be a long year. I like Mark Byington as a coach. Did some really great work at James Madison. Not sure I completely understand this roster construction from him. And then the other let's see it guy for me in the SEC is Chris Jans at Mississippi State. So with Chris Jans, right, you lose Keyshawn Murphy, in conference transfer, kind of a bummer for him. You lose Riley Kugel, who's finally out of eligibility. RJ Melendez as well. Kanye Clary is gone. That was a guy that was really interesting at Penn State before some end of the year issues for him a couple years ago. But like I said, it all hinges on Josh Hubbard. Just how good can he be? And some really interesting pieces out of the transfer portal. You get Jaden Epps, who averaged 13 points a game at Georgetown. Really interesting backcourt piece. Akor, interesting piece from Kansas State. He was a really highly sought after transfer before last year. Last year's Kansas State team didn't do really anyone any favors, which is not necessarily Akor's fault. He's listed as a guard, but he's 6'9", 230. He has a bunch of skill to him. His overall stats for the last few years, not the best numbers overall. His 3-point shooting numbers are 41%, but that's buoyed by 1 year that he shot 44% from 3. He was 33% the other 2 years. Decent free throw shooter, pretty athletic guy, 58% shooter overall, who averages 5 rebounds a game for his career. Akor started his career out at Samford, actually. Really fascinating piece. I like the ad in terms of the ceiling potential when you look at Mississippi State. Rest of the roster, then Amir Ali, only 5.5 points per game at Arizona State, but I think he can be a glue guy, pull things together. And then some lower major guys transfer up, right? Brandon Walker from Montana State, average 15. Quincy Ballard and Jabari McGee from Wichita and UAB in the American. I think there are more pieces here overall for Mississippi State. I think the roster is going to fit together a little better. Is Chris Jans the one to maximize that roster? It absolutely remains to be seen. So with the players out of the way, my final thoughts on the SEC before we get you back out to high school football. I think it's a 3-team race in the SEC. Florida, till someone knocks them off their perch. Kentucky, I think there's another step forward in the Cats. And I think Tennessee has more offense in them than in years past. LSU and Georgia will be bad. I think Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Texas come out just somewhere in the middle. I just don't love the rosters. I think Mississippi State, like I said, is improved, has taken a step forward. We'll see if Chris Jans can coax the best out of them. The Ole Miss roster intrigues me to a degree, but really it's just, kind of morbid curiosity to see how it goes with AJ Storr in the fold. They also had Keza Giffa from High Point, James Scott from Louisville, Corin Johnson from Louisville as well, and Travis Perry, who was thought to be kind of Reed Shepherd 2.0 at Kentucky. But they lose Sean Padula. They lose Jamin Brakefield, Matt Morrell, who was a stud I talked about a lot in this segment last year. And then Jalen Murray and Dre Davis, all guys that averaged 10 points per game. Getting Malik Dia back will be big for Ole Miss. But again, I just go back to with Chris Beard, man, you made such a hard pivot from your aggressive defensive style to the offense. It's kind of Greg Gard-esque. I don't know if I fully buy it yet. I have Bama and A&M as dark horses just because I think Bama, with the math, the way that Nate Oates likes to shoot threes, they can be in any game and they can lose it by 30 at the same time. So it's hard to count Alabama out as consistently as they've been at the top of the SEC under Nate Oates. And then A&M, again, not a bad team, not a bad program by any sense of the imagination. My guess, though, is that they get written off a little bit by the media writ large just because of the Bucky McMillan effect. They lose Wade Taylor. They lose Jurek Phelps, Pharrell Payne, Henry Coleman, Manny Obaseki, a lot of names that Husker fans remember from a couple years ago. Solomon Washington also gone. CJ Wilcher graduates. But here's what they bring in. Jakari Lane, 17-point per game scorer at North Alabama. Pop Isaacs, weird get for them, proven bucket getter at this level. They get Mackenzie Mbako from Indiana. I think this system's going to be really good for him with an open floor. Marcus Hill from North Carolina State. Josh Holloway follows Bucky Ball from Samford to College Station. Rylan Griffin at Kansas, still awaiting the breakout there. Federico Squared. Federico is his actual name, not to make a joke, but athletic big man from Texas Tech. Zach Clements from Kansas. Interesting kind of backup role glue piece. I'm not going to call my shot and say that A&M necessarily finishes in the top 4, but I think there are enough pieces there that I'm legitimately more intrigued by Texas A&M's roster than I am by even Texas's roster just across the state. So then the last two questions here, or last two categories, I should say. 3 teams trending down. I don't know if Missouri is a tournament team this year. Such a wild swing over the last couple of years for them. They'll be interesting. I don't love the roster, but with Mark Mitchell back, I'm curious to see if that former Duke guy has another leap in him. South Carolina, like I said, just am not buying the roster. Think it's tough for Lamont Paris right now. Bad as they were last year, they should still get to 12, 13 wins, but I don't think it's going to look nearly as great without the NBA prospect Colin Murray Boyles on the roster. And Auburn, I put in the trending down mostly as a troll. Auburn will still be good. They got enough pieces. Bruce Pearl's a really good coach, but I put trending down just because I don't think they'll be historically great again. And if you disagree with that, please absolutely sue me. The 3 teams I have with questions. Arkansas, I mentioned a little bit before, the shooting. Will there be enough ball to go around, and will there be enough floor to space for all these guys to be able to drive it, right? That's a lot of smaller guards that need the ball in their hands, and that is never a way to make me feel confident about a team and its chances. But we've seen Coach John Calipari do this before, take the talent and make it work. For Vanderbilt, it's the front court. I'm not a Jalen Washington believer. I haven't seen it from him yet. I'm not sure it's going to be there. Maybe Vandy can have the backcourt and the wings to make it work. I'm not necessarily buying. And then with Oklahoma, how does it all gel? Does Xavier Brown translate? Does Tay Davis turn into more than just a bucket getter? Can Darian Reed take a step up? And what do they get from the guys that were on the roster last year but didn't necessarily play a huge role? So at the end of the day, I think the SEC is still going to be a fun conference. I'm not so sure that it's going to be quite as strong as it was last year. It'll still be good. It'll still be competitive night in, night out. Not sure I would hang my hat on the SEC being the best conference in college basketball this coming year, but it's certainly going to be competitive night in, night out, and fun to watch. That'll do it for me here at 1040 O Street. That'll do it for this episode of the Corner 3 podcast. I'm going to get out of the way. When we return here on the FM dial, it'll be Nick Sainert and Jay Foreman for high school football, Lincoln Southeast and Lincoln Southwest. We heard from Southwest head coach Grant Trainwitz last week. Nick had a chance this week to sit down with Lincoln Southeast head coach Ryan Gatula. All that and more ahead here on the Ticket. Second game of the doubleheader comes your way after this. Load up on meat and more this fall at the Mercado by Certified Piedmontese. This week's specials through September 9th are 15% off produce, $1 off all drinks, and 8-ounce grass-fed, grass-finished flat iron steaks for $12.99 each. Plus, stop by for lunch on Fired Up Thursday at the Mercado East or Fired Up Friday